Dragon King Bastien Cinderhall burned the letters that had kept him alive, while Sabine Orlow stood close enough to smell her own words turning to smoke. The Cinderhall Royal Archive had opened for the wedding record ceremony. Before the vows, it would permanently name Lady Amabel Rook as the woman whose correspondence had preserved the captive king. Once sealed, gratitude would become history, and theft would become law. Amabel stood beside the unsigned register. Chancellor Merrick Sorn waited near the bronze brazier with one of Sabine's drafts between two careful fingers. "No royal seal," he said. "No lawful signature. Only handwriting made to resemble letters already credited to Lady Amabel Rook." Every letter had entered the prison beneath House Rook's diplomatic seal because the Rooks controlled the ransom corridor, but the seal identified the courier channel, not the writer. Merrick had turned a courier seal into an author's name. Bastien had never seen Sabine's original hand. Every letter that reached his cell had been recopied onto prison issue paper, stripped of signature and courier mark. The pages in Sabine's wooden case were the drafts she had kept before entering each message into the prison supply ledger. "The seals were replaced," Sabine said. "And the signatures?" Merrick asked. "Removed." "By whom?" "You." Merrick did not flinch. "Your Majesty, Sabine Orlow had archive access after your return. She could have copied private material and built ciphers after your escape became public." Bastien stood in wedding armor, a bronze dragon clasp at his throat. Captivity had left a pale scar across one cheek, and a stillness that had not existed before prison. He had once written that silence frightened him more than pain. Now he used silence against her. "Read the third page," Sabine said. "The escape route is hidden in the first word of every sentence." Bastien took the draft. "North. Ash. Third. Bell." The beginning of the route aligned before his eyes. Merrick leaned toward him. "Continue publicly, and you expose a sealed passage before the wedding court. House Rook's alliance may not survive an accusation built from an archivist's copies." Bastien's thumb stopped against the page. Sabine saw memory lose to power. "You recognize it." "I recognize the route. You recognize how I wrote it." "I never saw this hand." "Because every page was recopied before it reached you." Merrick extended his palm. "No author's seal. No signature. No verified original." Amabel's fingers tightened near the register. "I was told the letters entered beneath my house seal," she said. "I was never shown the original hand." She looked at Merrick, not Sabine. That was not innocence. It was not confession either. Bastien closed the page. "You copied private correspondence." "I wrote it. The woman who wrote those letters knew things no archive clerk could know. Because you told me." His expression hardened with the old terror of having captivity opened before people who knew him only as king. "This ceremony stabilizes the throne," he said. "You came here to accuse my chancellor and my future queen of stealing the years I survived. I came because you are about to make the theft permanent." Merrick lowered the drafts toward the brazier. "Knowledge of one route proves access, not authorship." Sabine kept her voice steady. "During the final winter of your captivity, you wrote that you had begun forgetting your own face." The archive quieted. "You said you were not afraid to die. You were afraid captivity had made you someone no one would mourn." Amabel's hand left the wedding register without signing it. Merrick answered first. "A copied confession proves access to stolen records, not authorship." "No," Bastien said. "That sentence never entered the archive." Merrick recovered quickly. "One private sentence still does not prove she wrote every letter. Let trained keepers test the pages away from public manipulation." Sabine removed the last unburned draft from her case. "The answer is here." Bastien held out his hand. She almost gave it to him. Then she looked at the pages already curling in his fire and pressed the draft to her chest. "You chose the seal over the words. You have placed my captivity, my marriage, and the authority of my archive before the court. And you placed my mind, my courage, and my risk beneath another woman's name." Merrick stepped closer. "Confiscate the page." Sabine looked at Bastien. "Will you let him take the last thing he failed to erase? Give me the page." "No." Two guards approached. His jaw tightened. "Sabine." She hated how much it hurt. "I never asked you for a crown," she said. "I asked you to survive." The bronze dragon clasp at his throat glowed. He looked again at the pattern. North, Ash, Third, Bell. For one final moment, he could have read further. Merrick said. Speak the route here, and sealed prison passages become public record. The alliance fractures before the vows. Bastien chose the throne over the voice that had known him without it. Burn them. Merrick seized the page and threw it into the brazier. Sabine lunged, but the guards caught her arms. A few courtiers laughed. Bastien did not. That should have comforted her. It did not. A man did not have to enjoy humiliation to make it lawful. The page burned white. Every flame in the royal archive went out. Darkness swallowed the court. Then the ashes rose. They gathered above the brazier, line after line reforming in pale silver grey. Bastien stepped toward them, his face drained of colour. The ash letters opened like pages in an invisible hand. And in Sabine's voice, they whispered the answer he had carried alone for years. Not while I can still write your name, Emberheart. The ashes had repeated Sabine's private answer. They had not yet proved whose hand first wrote it. Silver-grey lines hovered above the bronze brazier, while the Cinderhall Royal Archive remained dark. The ash letters held the wedding court inside their pale glow, their last whispered word still fixed in Bastien Cinderhall's face. Emberheart. Chancellor Merrick Sorn recovered first. Ash remembers words, he said. It does not identify the hand that first wrote them. His voice remained calm, reasonable, dangerous. Sabine pulled once against the guards holding her arms. Then let go of me and test the hand. Bastien looked at the guards. Release her. They obeyed. Sabine stepped free and rubbed the pressure from her sleeves. She did not thank him. Stopping a humiliation after ordering it did not make him merciful. Merrick turned toward the court. Sabine Orlow had access to captivity records after His Majesty returned. Private language proves knowledge. It does not prove authorship. A cipher may be reconstructed after an escape becomes public. That sentence never entered the archive, Bastien said. Then someone could have repeated it to her. No one heard it. The certainty in his answer changed Lady Amabel Rook's expression. She stood beside the unsigned wedding register, one hand resting near the empty line that would soon enter her name into royal history. I did not hear it, Amabel said. Sabine looked at her. What were you told? Amabel's fingers tightened against the register. I was told the correspondence had been commissioned under House Rook authority. I was told that because our seal carried the letters, the archive considered them the work of our house. Your house carried my words, Sabine said. It did not create them. Amabel held her gaze. I accepted an attribution I had not examined. The admission did not make her innocent. It made her silence visible. Merrick stepped between them. House Rook's seal was the only lawful identifier attached to the prison correspondence. The archive recorded what the evidence allowed. Sabine pointed toward the ashes, then read the evidence you tried to burn. Bastien looked at the suspended page, the third page cipher. The first word of every sentence, Sabine said. Ask for the next 4 words. The ash letters shifted above the brazier. Each line turned until its first word faced the court. North. Ash. Third. Bell. Bastien's hand closed at his side. The ashes turned again. Drain. East. Blin. Watch. His face changed. The northern stair and ash door were in the official report, he said. The eastern drain was not. Merrick answered immediately. Then the archive leak began before the escape report was sealed. Sabine looked at him. You would rather invent a second theft than admit the first. The cipher proves non-public knowledge, Merrick said. It still does not prove who composed the page. Then bring the prison supply ledger. For the first time, Merrick paused. Only briefly. The ledger remains under House Rook diplomatic seal. Sabine turned toward Amabel. Then release it. A Rook witness near the wedding register stepped forward. My lady, opening that ledger exposes ransom negotiations, private payments, and diplomatic routes. Amabel removed the silver signet from her hand. The gesture was small. The political cost was not. She crossed to the iron diplomatic clasp set into the archive table and pressed the signet into its lock. House Rook releases the prison supply ledger for examination before the wedding court. The clasp opened. Merrick's expression remained controlled, but the line of his mouth hardened. An archive keeper brought forward a long iron-bound volume and placed it beneath the ash letters. Merrick reached for the cover. Bastien stopped him. You will not touch the ledger. Merrick's hand remained suspended. Your Majesty, you argued that the record must remain uncontaminated. It will. Sabine watched Bastien draw the book toward himself. He did not look at her for approval. Good. He had not earned it. The ledger opened beneath his hand. Columns of dates, package codes, copy orders, and diplomatic seals covered the thick pages. Sabine stepped closer. Final winter. 3rd month. Ransom corridor entries. Bastien found the section. 12 correspondence deliveries appeared beneath the House Rook's seal. Each had entered months before his escape. Each carried the notation, recopied into prison issue hand. Each had been stripped of personal signature before delivery. Merrick leaned over the page without touching it. That proves correspondence existed. It does not prove Sabine wrote it. My name was never entered, Sabine said. I used a courier mark because the occupation code punished direct communication with the captive king by execution. The revelation did not sound romantic. It made the cost of her letters impossible to ignore. Bastien looked at her. What mark? Read the erased courier column. He turned the ledger toward the ashlight. At first, the column appeared blank. Then silver-gray dust drifted from the suspended letters and settled into shallow grooves where ink had been scraped away. The erased marks darkened. Greyfinch 12. Bastien turned the page. The same mark appeared beside the 2nd delivery. Then the 3rd. All 12. Merrick's voice stayed even. A courier mark proves transport. It does not prove composition. Greyfinch 12 may have carried pages written by another source. Sabine pointed to the dates. The same courier entered every coded message before the escape. A courier may also copy, edit, or arrange correspondence. Then let the registry determine who used the mark. The registry is separate from the supply ledger. Of course it is. Bastien looked at Sabine. Why Greyfinch? She did not answer. Not yet. Her name had once carried a death sentence inside that corridor. She would not give the court another truth, simply because the king had finally begun asking correctly. Merrick saw her silence and turned it against her. She refuses, because the mark may not belong to her. Sabine faced him. I refuse because you are still treating every answer as property the court can seize. Bastien absorbed the line without defense. Then he examined the altered column beneath the courier entries. Something else was removed. Ash gathered along a 2nd scraped line. Merrick's gaze sharpened. Sabine saw it. Read it, she said. Bastien's thumb moved over the damaged vellum. The hidden entry surfaced beneath the ash. Original courier mark removed under Chancellor Merrick Sorn's archive authority. The ledger had shown whose authority erased Greyfinch 12. It had not yet shown whose hand the mark belonged to. Ash rested inside the scraped grooves of the prison supply ledger, holding Chancellor Merrick Sorn's archive authority in clear silver grey. No one in the Cinderhall Royal Archive moved to accuse him. Merrick made accusation, looked premature, before anyone spoke. Yes, he said. My authority removed the courier mark. Lady Amabel Rook turned from the open diplomatic clasp. You admit it. I admit to protecting a civilian identity during occupation. Merrick faced the wedding court without raising his voice. Direct correspondence with a captive king carried a sentence of execution. Erasing courier marks was not theft. It was survival protocol. Sabine Orlow looked at the missing column. Protection ends when danger ends. Merrick met her gaze. Does it? Bastien returned years ago. And occupation informants remained. Retaliation lists remained. Every person who touched a royal escape route remained vulnerable. Sabine stepped nearer the ledger. Then why was the correspondence restored beneath Amabel's name instead of the courier's mark? That question assumes the courier wrote it. A useful assumption for you to avoid. Merrick placed both hands behind his back. A courier carries. An editor revises. A scribe copies. None of those acts proves composition. He had not denied erasing the mark. He had changed what the mark meant. Bastien Cinderhall stared down at the 12 entries. The ashlight caught the scar along his cheek and made it look newly cut. Bring the courier registry, he said. An archive keeper hesitated. Your Majesty, the prison network registry was divided after the occupation. Cinderhall retained copy permissions. House Rook retained diplomatic identities. Amabel's face tightened. Then bring both. A Rook witness spoke carefully. My lady, some identities were sealed for life. So was the false attribution placed beside my name. Amabel answered. Open the registry. Sabine watched her. Amabel was not defending Sabine. She was defending the line between what her house had carried and what it had claimed. That distinction had arrived late, but it had arrived. 2 narrow books were brought to the archive table. One wore Cinderhall black leather, the other bore House Rook's silver clasp. Amabel released the second seal herself. Merrick looked at Bastien. "Before you proceed, Majesty, understand the danger. If Greyfinch 12 belonged to a servant, clerk, or ransom courier, naming that person publicly may complete the execution your enemies never managed." Sabine's voice stayed level. "Do not make yourself noble with the danger you used to erase me. I used no name. You allowed another woman's name to take its place." Amabel lowered her eyes. Bastien heard the silence between them. "What were you told?" he asked her. Amabel did not reach for the wedding register this time. That correspondence commissioned beneath House Rook authority belonged legally to House Rook, that the woman whose name appeared in the royal record would represent the alliance, not necessarily the hand. "And you accepted that?" Her expression hardened with shame she would not perform for sympathy. "I accepted the honor because it strengthened my house and secured the marriage. I did not ask whose hand disappeared beneath it." Sabine looked at her. Silence can sign a theft as cleanly as ink. Amabel did not defend herself. Merrick did. The archive followed diplomatic law. House authorship is recognized when individual composition cannot be verified. "Then why remove Greyfinch 12? Bastien asked. "To prevent an execution claim after my return, because the danger remained." Bastien's eyes lifted from the ledger. "Yet you left House Rook's seal visible. A protected house can survive scrutiny. An unnamed civilian cannot." The argument was neat. Too neat. Sabine had learned in prison correspondence that the most dangerous lies rarely contradicted the truth. They stood beside it and borrowed its clothing. Bastien opened the Cinderhall registry. Rows of archive permissions filled the pages. Copy hands, supply rooms, approved inks, ration codes, and delivery windows. No names appeared beside Greyfinch 12. Only a notation. Archive hand. S.O. Bastien stopped. Sabine saw recognition reach him before he controlled it. Merrick leaned closer. Initials are not identity. Several archive hands carried similar designation. "Name them," Sabine said. The keeper searched the registry. Sarah Olven, Soren Orm, Sabine Orlow. 3 possibilities, Merrick said. Not proof. Bastien did not move from the page. Sabine knew why. The ash letters above the brazier had begun rearranging themselves. First words aligned. Pauses returned. The small, hooked stroke she always used before a coded direction appeared in silver gray. Bastien had seen that rhythm for 3 years. He had known it before the court did. Sabine looked at him. "Say it." His eyes met hers. "I recognized your voice in the letters before the ashes spoke." The admission altered the room more than a command. Merrick answered immediately. "Recognition after suggestion is not reliable evidence." Sabine ignored him. "Before you ordered them burned?" Bastien's silence held the answer. She felt the old wound open without surprise. "Yes," he said. "You heard me in them. I heard something familiar and chose the seal." His jaw tightened. "I chose the record I believed could be defended. You chose the record that required nothing from you." The words struck him cleanly. He did not look away. "That is true." Sabine felt no relief. Late honesty did not restore burned pages. Bastien turned to the House Rook registry. "Find Greyfinch 12. Amabel opened the diplomatic volume. The courier marks had been listed by route rather than name. Greyfinch 12 appeared beside 12 prison entries, each matched to an authorization code from the Cinderhall archive supply room. Sabine knew the code before the keeper read it. Private ink allotment. South archive desk. Here disk. Merrick remained composed. Access proves handling. It still does not prove she composed the letters. "No," Sabine said, "but it proves the same archive hand prepared every message before your authority erased the mark." Ash drifted onto the final registry line. The hidden notation darkened beneath it. Greyfinch 12, assigned to Cinderhall archive hand S.O. The initials linked Greyfinch 12 to Sabine's archive access. Merrick Sorn made certain the court understood that access was not authorship. "S.O. identifies an archive hand," he said. "It does not tell us whether that hand composed, copied, edited, or merely carried the correspondence." The ash letters remained suspended above the brazier. their silver-grey edges stirring though no wind moved through the Cinderhall Royal Archive. Sabine looked at the erased courier column. "You removed the mark," she said, "then made its absence the argument against me. I removed a civilian identity from an occupation record and left another woman's name in its place." Lady Amabel Rook stood beside the wedding register, but she no longer touched it. Merrick turned toward her. "House Rook's authorship remains legally valid, unless an individual author is proven." "I did not write the letters," Amabel said. The admission drew every eye in the hall. Merrick's expression barely changed. "Your house commissioned and transported them." "My house transported them," Amabel corrected. "I accepted the honor because the Alliance benefited from it. That does not make my hand the one he read in captivity." Sabine studied hair. Amabel had not chosen Sabine's side. She had chosen not to speak a lie aloud once the lie became visible. It was less than courage, more than continued silence. Merrick faced Bastien. "Then the wedding record requires an immediate authorship examination. Either Sabine proves personal composition, or she answers for corrupting royal archives and manufacturing evidence before the Dragon Court." Bastien's gaze moved to Sabine. She saw the conflict clearly now. The wedding alliance waited behind him. His captivity waited inside her. Once again, he wanted a record strong enough to spare him from choosing memory. "Order the examination," he said. Pain moved beneath Sabine's ribs, but she did not lower her head. "You are still making me expose what you told me in darkness, before I am permitted to own the words that answered you." His face tightened. "I know what I am asking." "No, you know what you need." The bronze dragon clasp at his throat gave a faint ember glow. Merrick signaled to an archive keeper. "Bring the sealed prison copy." A narrow iron case was placed on the table. House Rook's courier seal remained pressed into black wax across its clasp. Merrick rested one hand beside it. This page was allegedly delivered during the final winter of His Majesty's captivity. It has not been publicly opened since his return. Sabine looked at the case. "Allegedly? You claimed the cipher proves authorship. Identify its structure before the seal is broken. And if I refuse?" "The court records that Greyfinch 12 may have transported the correspondence, but cannot prove composition." Bastien stepped toward the table. "What do you require?" Merrick answered without looking at Sabine, the first word sequence and the private exchange hidden beneath it. Sabine almost laughed. He wanted her to reopen Bastien's prison voice before nobles who had laughed while her drafts burned. She looked at the Dragon King. "Will you permit him to use your worst year as a courtroom instrument?" Bastien met her eyes. "If I stop this hearing, your name remains outside the record." "That is not an answer." "No," his voice lowered. "It is the consequence of what I ordered burned." For once, he did not hide behind Merrick. That honesty came too late to comfort her, but it kept her from walking away. "Read the delivery date," she said. The keeper examined the outer register. "Final winter, 9th correspondence entry." Sabine closed her eyes briefly. She remembered the draft. She remembered writing by a single lamp while occupation patrols searched the lower archive. "West," she said. "Cinder. 2nd. Dawn." Merrick nodded to the keeper. The seal was cut. The page inside had been recopied in the same uniform prison hand Bastien had seen for 3 years. The keeper read the first word of each sentence. "West. Cinder. 2nd. Damn." Bastien's breath changed. "The Western Cinder Gate," he said. "Second watch before dawn." Merrick remained unmoved. That route appeared in post-war interrogations. "Ask for the private exchange," Sabine said. Merrick's eyes settled on her. What question had the king written before this answer? Bastien went still. Sabine looked at him. "Not the court. You asked, what if freedom makes me cruel?" The words exposed something more dangerous than a military passage. They exposed the man beneath the crown. Bastien's fingers closed against the table. Sabine continued, her voice quieter. I answered, "Then let the man you were in the dark judge the king you become in fire." The ash letters moved. Silver-grey fragments gathered around the sealed prison copy and completed the sentence exactly as Sabine had spoken it. Bastien looked at her as though he had found the prison lamp still burning after all these years. Merrick broke the moment. An archive handler could have read both sides of the exchange before the records were sealed. "You said the sentence never entered the archive," Sabine reminded Bastien. "It did not." Merrick's voice stayed calm. "Then Greyfinch 12 may have handled both messages without composing either." Sabine turned toward him. How many invisible writers do you intend to invent before admitting the courier had a mind? As many as the evidence permits. He opened a second compartment in the iron case. Inside lay another folded page. This copy carries a more complex cipher, Merrick said. One never included in the escape inquiry. If Sabine composed the correspondence, she should recognize it. The page bore House Rook's seal. Too perfect. Sabine stepped closer. Merrick lifted it beyond her reach. Name the pattern before it is opened. She ignored the seal and studied the faint blue gleam beneath the paper's edge. Her stomach tightened. Bastien saw her expression. What is it? That is not prison paper. Merrick's hand became very still. Sabine pointed to the blue ember watermark hidden beneath the wax. I catalogued the first shipment that carried that mark. The ash letters circled the folded page but refused to settle into lines. Sabine looked directly at Bastien. That paper did not exist until 2 years after you escaped. The false prison page did not accuse Merrick. It accused the ceremony. For several seconds, no one in the Cinderhall Royal Archive spoke. The blue ember watermark glimmered beneath the folded sheet, faint but unmistakable to anyone trained in royal paper stock. Sabine Orlow had catalogued the first shipment herself. 2 years after His Majesty's escape, she said. That was when blue ember fiber entered Cinderhall paper. Merrick saw and lowered the page onto the archive table with deliberate care. Then the wrong copy was placed in the examination case. Sabine looked at him. A wrong copy sealed as prison evidence. A clerical substitution is not authorship theft. No, she said. It is only useful to the person trying to prove I failed a test built from evidence that did not exist. Lady Amabel Rook moved closer to the table. Whose seal is on the case? House Rook's, Merrick answered. Amabel's expression hardened. My house sealed diplomatic transport, not archive contents. Your household witnesses received the case after restoration. They received it already closed. Merrick turned toward Bastien. Your Majesty, this is precisely why the hearing must remain procedural. One mislabeled page cannot be allowed to fracture a royal marriage. Bastien's gaze stayed on the watermark. The ash letters hovered above him, refusing to settle around the forged page. They moved instead towards Sabine's burned drafts, arranging their first words into the beginnings of routes only he had walked. He had trusted the seal over that pattern once. Sabine watched him understand that the choice had not become less cruel merely because he finally recognized it. Who had authority to replace material inside the iron case? Bastien asked. Merrick answered without hesitation. Several senior keepers, House Rook observers, Royal Archive officers, myself. Who approved the final wedding record collection? I did. The admission carried no shame, only office. Merrick continued. Because the wedding required one verified historical account, courts cannot function if every anonymous contribution is treated as personal property. Sabine stepped closer to the counterfeit page. My words became anonymous because someone removed the mark. To protect Greyfinch 12. Then why build a hearing designed to erase her again? Merrick's expression remained composed. Because protection does not establish authorship. Bastien reached for the wedding register. Amabel's hand moved toward it too, then stopped. Majesty, Merrick warned. Once the record ceremony is suspended, House Rook may treat the act as public doubt against the alliance. Bastien opened the register to the unsigned attribution page. The line naming Lady Amabel Rook as author waited beneath the royal dragon seal. Sabine remembered the sound of her drafts catching fire. Do not pause the ceremony for me, she said. Bastien looked at her. Pause it because you are willing to write a woman into history using evidence you had not read. His face tightened. You are right. The words did not heal anything. They only prevented him from lying again. He pressed his thumb into the royal wax. Dragonfire spread beneath his skin, dark red and controlled. The seal softened, then split. Gasps rose from the Rook witnesses. Bastien tore the attribution page from the wedding register. Until the correspondence is examined in full, no author will be entered into royal history. Merrick's tone sharpened. You are suspending the wedding record on the word of an archive clerk. No, Bastien said. I am suspending it because I ordered evidence burned after seeing a cipher begin to align. The confession changed the hall. He had named his own choice before Merrick could rename it as manipulation. Amabel looked at the ruined seal. And the wedding? The vows cannot proceed while the record used to justify them remains under dispute. A rook witness stepped forward. Your Majesty, delaying the alliance may reopen the Eastern trade conflict. I know. Merrick studied him. Then you risk the border, the treasury, and your legitimacy for a claim still unproven. Bastien's voice lowered. I risked another woman's name because certainty was politically convenient. I will not repeat that mistake to protect a wedding date. Sabine felt something in her chest pull painfully toward him. She refused to call it hope. Hope had already cost her enough. Merrick turned to her. You see what your accusation threatens. Sabine met his gaze. Truth did not threaten this alliance. The lie holding it together did. The ash letters stirred above the brazier. One thin line of silver ash moved toward Bastien's torn register page, then stopped before touching Amabel's name. Bastien watched it. Bring the royal paper inventory, he ordered. Every shipment, watermark, and archive allocation from the year of my escape through today. Merrick's eyes narrowed. That inventory is restricted to the Chancellor's office. Not anymore. Bastien removed the iron archive key from Merrick's side of the table. He did not touch the man. He simply took back the authority he had allowed Merrick to hold unquestioned. Until this hearing ends, no evidence moves through the archive under a single office. Lady Amabel will appoint one rook witness. Sabine will name one archive witness. I will appoint the third. Sabine's brows drew together. You do not appoint my witness. Bastien looked at her. Then choose both archive witnesses. Merrick's mouth hardened. You would give a claimant control over royal evidence? I would give the woman whose drafts I burned the right to see what remains. Sabine held his chaser. You are not returning what you took. No, he said. I am beginning where I should have begun by stopping the taking. That answer hurt more than an apology would have, because it sounded like the man who had once written to her in darkness. She stepped away before the memory softened her face. The paper inventory arrived in 3 chained volumes. Bastien opened the first beneath the ash letters, while Amabel broke the rook witness seal. Sabine searched the entries for blue ember fiber. The first shipment had entered the archive 2 years after the escape. The counterfeit page had been cut from that shipment. Below the allocation line, a later notation had been scraped nearly clean. Ash drifted down and filled the damaged letters. Sabine read the restored words before anyone else could. Wedding evidence case supplied by Chancellor Merrick Sorn's private archive room. The counterfeit page had come from Merrick Sorn's private archive room. That fact did not prove why it had been placed inside the wedding evidence case. Merrick made certain everyone understood the difference. My office prepared hundreds of pages for the ceremony, he said. A false allocation may indicate negligence. It does not establish intent. Sabine Orlow stood beside the opened inventory, while the ash letters circled above the archive table. Then open your private room. A faint change passed through Merrick's face. Not fear, calculation. The Chancellor's archive contained state correspondence, succession agreements, and sealed intelligence. Bastien Cinderhall removed the iron key from the table. And evidence prepared for my wedding record. Merrick looked at him. Your Majesty, private rooms exist because kings cannot govern by public suspicion. Bastien's voice stayed cold. I governed by private certainty when I ordered her drafts burned. Sabine felt the words reach toward her. She refused them. Naming guilt was not the same as repairing it. Lady Amabel Rook stepped away from the unsigned wedding register. House Rook will witness the search. Merrick turned to her. You would expose the alliance's internal preparation before a claimant who has not yet proven authorship? Amabel's expression tightened. I accepted credit I did not examine. I will not protect the room that prepared it. The private archive door stood behind the upper shelves, built from black dragonwood and bound with bronze. Bastien inserted the Chancellor's key. Merrick did not try to stop him. That restraint made him more dangerous. Inside, narrow cabinets lined the walls. Each bore labels for military records, ransom negotiations, wedding protocol, and royal memory review. Sabine stopped at the final cabinet. Royal memory review. Bastien saw it. What is that? Merrick answered evenly. Preparation material. Your captivity created political vulnerabilities. The court required an approved account before foreign houses could exploit it. You edited my memory? I organized what the kingdom could safely inherit. Sabine looked at him and decided who was allowed to own the words inside it. Merrick's gaze rested on her. An anonymous prison correspondent, could not become part of royal history without exposing the escape network. She could after the occupation ended. Could she? He moved closer to the cabinet but did not touch it. Greyfinch 12 violated occupation law, ransom agreements, and neutral corridor rules. If the writer's identity became public, House Rook could be accused of facilitating a royal escape. Retaliation claims would follow. Trade corridors would close. People would die. The argument was not empty. That was why it had survived. Sabine met his eyes. You protected my life while the prison held him. Yes. And after he returned? Merrick said nothing. Bastien opened the cabinet. Inside lay 12 thin folders. Each carried a House Rook seal. Each bore a date, matching the prison supply ledger. Sabine reached for the first, but Bastien stepped back from the cabinet to give her space. She noticed. She did not thank him. The folder held a recopied letter in standardized prison hand, a summary of its emotional content, and a narrow strip where the original courier notation had been cut away. Grey ash drifted from the ash letters and settled over the missing edge. Greyfinch 12 appeared. Amabel opened another folder. Her face changed. This is addressed to me. Sabine looked over. The page was not a letter from the prison. It was instruction. Merrick spoke before Amabel could read it aloud. The future queen required familiarity with the correspondence publicly attributed to her house. Amabel lifted her eyes. You gave me selected phrases to memorize. I gave you the history the archive had already recognized. You told me they were summaries commissioned by my family. They were. Sabine took the page from Amabel. Several private lines had been copied beneath headings. His recurring fear, becoming cruel after freedom. Preferred response. Remind him that darkness preserves the man beneath the crown. Private address used in correspondence. Emberheart. Bastien went still. The silence inside the room turned sharp. You taught her the name, he said. Merrick faced him. I prepared Lady Amabel to understand the emotional burden attached to your survival. You prepared her to sound like the woman who wrote to me. I prepared the future queen to enter a marriage with a traumatized king. The words were calm enough to sound almost compassionate. Sabine looked at the pages. Her tenderness had been divided into useful categories. Her courage had become diplomatic preparation. Her intimacy had been reduced to approved responses. Bastien reached for one of the instruction sheets, then stopped before touching it. Did Amabel know who Greyfinch 12 was? No, Merrick said. Amabel answered at the same time. No. Their voices overlapped. Sabine watched them both. Amabel's shock looked real. So did the shame that followed it. I knew the court credited House Rook, Amabel said. I knew I was expected to speak as though the letters belonged to our alliance. I did not know a living woman had been removed from them. You did not ask, Sabine said. Amabel lowered her eyes. No. Bastien looked at Sabine. Why did you remove your name? The question was quieter than the rest. She hated that he still had the power to make the room disappear around it. Because discovery meant execution, she said. Not exile, not dismissal. Execution. The ash letters settled lower. When I entered each message into the supply route, I used Greyfinch 12. I removed every signature before the prison copy was made. I wanted you alive more than I wanted you to know who saved you. Bastien's face tightened. And when I returned, you never asked who wrote them. The words struck him harder than accusation. Merrick intervened. The king returned to a fractured court. He required stability, not an illegal correspondent claiming emotional authority over him. Sabine turned toward him. I claimed authorship. You made that sound like possession because you knew the difference would condemn you. I preserved the throne. You preserved a useful version of me. Bastien opened the final folder. Unlike the others, it held one of Sabine's original courier strips. Her hooked notation marked the edge. Greyfinch 12. Below it, Merrick's handwriting filled the archive order. Remove private courier attribution after royal restoration. Register correspondence under House Rook authority for wedding continuity. The ash letters rose around the order. Then, one additional page slid from the back of the folder. Amabel read the heading aloud. Instruction for Lady Amabel Rook. Memorizing closed replies before first private audience with the king. The instruction page did not make Lady Amabel Rook the thief. It proved the court had trained her to live inside another woman's intimacy. Amabel stood beneath the suspended ash letters, staring at the private replies Chancellor Merrick Sorn had ordered her to memorize before her first audience with Bastien. Preferred response: remind him that darkness preserves the man beneath the crown. Private address: Emberheart. Her fingers tightened around the page. You gave me words meant for another woman, she said. Merrick remained composed. I gave the future queen language that could steady a king damaged by captivity. You gave her my voice, Sabine said. Merrick looked at her. A throne cannot build policy around an anonymous correspondent. No. So you built a bride around her. The ash letters stirred sharply. The instruction sheet tore itself from Amabel's hand and rose into the silver-gray pages. Lines shifted into their original order, separating Sabine's private replies from Merrick's court-approved summaries. Bastien watched the two versions divide. One had been written to reach a frightened man in a cell. The other had been edited to manage a king. He looked at Merrick. How many times did Amabel use those replies with me? Amabel answered before the Chancellor could. 3. Bastien turned toward her. Amabel did not hide behind ceremony. At our first private audience, you asked whether a crown could make a man cruel. I answered from the instruction page. Sabine's chest tightened. That question had once belonged to the space between her and Bastien. Amabel continued. The second time, you woke from a prison dream and called me Emberheart. I knew the word because Merrick had told me what to say if you used it. Bastien's face went still. What did you say? That the dark could not keep your name while I still remembered it. Sabine closed her eyes. It was almost her sentence. Almost was what made it cruel. Merrick's voice remained measured. Lady Amabel performed the emotional duty expected of a future queen. Sabine opened her eyes. You taught her the shape of my tenderness and called it duty. Bastien looked at Sabine. I thought she remembered. No, Sabine said. You hoped the official record had spared you from needing to recognize me. The words landed without anger. That made them harder to escape. Bastien stepped closer, then stopped before entering the space around her. I recognized something was wrong, and burned the pages anyway. Yes, he did not blame Merrick. He did not blame the wedding alliance. That mattered. It did not repair anything. Bastien looked at the original courier strip in the final folder. The archive will restore Greyfinch 12 to the correspondence. Sabine stared at him. Greyfinch 12 kept me alive, she said. Sabine Orlow was the woman your court humiliated. His jaw tightened. Then both names will be entered. You still think this is only a record correction? What do you think it is? The end of my service to this court. The private archive seemed to contract around the sentence. Bastien's expression changed. Sabine, I spent 3 years writing to a man who had no one. Then I spent years watching a king praise another woman for surviving him. I did not know. You did not ask. I am asking now. She shook her head. You are asking, after the ashes made silence impossible. The ash letters descended until they hovered around her shoulders, their edges whispering like pages turned in an empty room. Merrick saw the court losing her and moved quickly. If Sabine leaves before the authorship hearing is complete, her claim remains unresolved. She looked at him, then let it remain uncomfortable. You would abandon the restoration of your own name? No. I'm refusing to keep performing my pain for people who burned the evidence and then demanded another demonstration. Bastien's voice lowered. If you leave, Merrick will use your absence. He has used my presence for years. Amabel folded the instruction page once and placed it on the table. She is right. Merrick turned toward her. You risk your house for a woman who has accused you of accepting stolen honor. I did accept it. Amabel's answer carried no plea for absolution. She removed the wedding signet from her finger and set it beside the unsigned register. I will not marry beneath an attribution I did not earn. Bastien looked at the ring. Sabine watched the alliance crack without feeling victorious. A woman's stolen voice should never have been the mortar holding it together. Merrick's tone cooled. If both claimant and bride withdraw, the eastern houses will call this court unstable. Bastien faced him. Then they will be correct. He turned back to Sabine. What do you need? The question nearly undid her. Not because it was enough. Because he had once asked it in letters when he had possessed nothing but a prison wall and her words. She looked toward the archive door. Distance from the man who loved my mind, while believing it belonged to someone else. Pain moved across his face before he controlled it. I will not stop you. No, Sabine said. You will finish the investigation without using my presence as proof that I have forgiven you. Bastien bowed his head once. I will. She took the original Grey Finch 12 strip from the folder. Merrick stepped forward. That is royal evidence. Sabine held it against her palm. It was mine before your office made it evidence. Bastien moved between them. She keeps it. Merrick's gaze sharpened. Without the original strip, the archive cannot complete attribution. Sabine walked toward the door. The ash letters followed. One by one, the silver-grey pages left the brazier and drifted after her through the darkened hall. When Bastien reached for the nearest page, it folded shut before his fingers touched it. Every restored sentence vanished. Every cipher closed. At the doorway, Sabine looked back only once. You wanted the letters without the woman who wrote them, she said. Now learn what the archive can remember without me. She stepped into the corridor. The ash letters went with her. Behind her, the Cinderhall Royal Archive lost every word. The Cinderhall Royal Archive had never been empty before. It still held thousands of volumes, sealed war maps, ransom ledgers, and wedding records. But after Sabine Orlow walked away, every restored sentence vanished from the ash letters. The pages Bastien had once followed through captivity became pale dust suspended beyond the archive doors. The institution had kept the records. It had lost the voice that made them truthful. Chancellor Merrick Sorn closed the private cabinet. Without the ash letters, the hearing cannot continue. Bastien Cinderhall looked at the scraped courier columns, the counterfeit prison page, and the instructions that had taught Lady Amabel Rook how to imitate another woman's tenderness. The hearing continues. On what evidence? On the evidence already recovered. Merrick's expression remained calm, recovered through a supernatural phenomenon that has now left royal custody. It followed the woman whose words we burned. That is interpretation, not law. Bastien turned toward the wedding court. Then the law will begin, with what I can prove, without magic. He took the unsigned marriage register from the archive table. Amabel watched him break the remaining royal clasp. Bastien, she said quietly, this alliance will not survive another public delay. It should not survive the truth beneath it. Merrick stepped forward. Your Majesty, the Eastern Houses will read cancellation as humiliation against House Rook. Amabel removed her wedding signet and placed it beside the broken register. My house accepted honor without examining its source, she said. We can survive humiliation better than we deserve to survive theft. Bastien met her eyes. You are released from the marriage compact without dishonor. And the attribution? Removed. He turned the register toward the witnesses and pressed his dragon seal into the blank page. The wax flared red. Let the record state that Lady Amabel Rook did not compose the prison correspondence. Let it also state that I accepted her attribution without examining the original evidence. Merrick's voice sharpened. You are confessing royal negligence before foreign witnesses. Yes. The single word cost him more than anger would have. Bastien continued. The wedding is cancelled. The captivity archive is reopened. Every surviving prison copy will be examined by dates, cipher structure, courier sequence, and original paper source. Amabel looked toward the corridor where Sabine had disappeared. Will she return for that? Bastien's hand tightened against the table. She was clear that the work must not depend on her forgiving me. Merrick studied him. Then you intend to rebuild her claim while she refuses the court. I intend to rebuild the truth whether she ever enters this hall again. The bronze dragon lamps along the walls remained dark. Bastien faced the senior keepers. Seal the Chancellor's private archive. Merrick's expression changed at last. Only slightly. On whose authority? Mine. You removed my control during the hearing. You did not strip my office. I am doing so now. A brittle unease moved through the archive offices. Merrick clasped his hands behind his back. You would remove the man who preserved the throne during your captivity because an archivist accused him of misattribution? No. Bastien stepped closer. I am removing the man who prepared counterfeit prison evidence, erased a courier mark after my return, and trained my future bride to answer with stolen intimacy. None of those acts has been proven malicious. They have been proven hidden. Secrecy is not treason. No, Bastien said. But secrecy no longer earns your custody of the proof. He took the Chancellor's archive chain from the table and gave it to 3 witnesses, 1 Cinderhall keeper, 1 House Rook diplomat, and 1 junior archivist who had never served Merrick's office. Until a public tribunal is complete, Chancellor Merrick Sorn holds no authority over captivity records, wedding records, or prison correspondence. Merrick looked at the divided chain. You are weakening the crown for a woman who may never choose you. Bastien's face went still. I am repairing what I broke for a woman who owes me no choice. The words reached the corridor. Sabine stood beyond the open doors beneath a row of unlit dragon lamps. The ash letters hovered behind her, folded and silent. She had returned only far enough to hear the orders. Bastien saw her. He did not move closer. You cancelled the wedding, she said. Yes. You removed Amabel's false attribution. Yes. And Merrick? Suspended from archive authority pending tribunal. Sabine looked past him at the witnesses dividing the archive keys. You should have done that before asking me to prove my own mind. I should have read the third page before I burned it. The admission settled between them. She held the Greyfinch 12 strip in one hand. Do not confuse correct action with courtship. I will not. Do not restore my name because you want the woman from the letters to return to you. I will restore it because I helped erase it. Her expression softened for less than a breath. Then the memory of fire returned. The man in the prison listened better than the king. I know. No, she said. You know the sentence. You are only beginning to understand the cost. Bastien accepted that without defense. What remains? He asked. Sabine looked toward the ash letters. The letters proved that the voice, the roots, and the sending order belonged together. The ledger proves Greyfinch 12 carried them before your escape, but the court will still say a courier could have transported another writer's work. Merrick already has. He will say it again at the tribunal. What proves composition? Sabine opened her wooden case. Inside lay a narrow booklet bound in scorched grey thread. The ash letters unfolded behind her. Every suspended page turned toward it. Sabine rested her hand over the cover, but did not surrender it. The original cipher index, she said, written before the first letter ever entered the prison. The cipher index did not return Sabine Orlow to the Cinderhall Royal Archive. It made the archive come to her. She stood beneath the dark dragon lamps, with the scorched booklet held against her palm. Behind her, the ash letters hovered in perfect silence. Every folded page turned toward the grey thread binding. Bastien did not reach for it. He had learned that evidence taken from Sabine's hand became another form of theft. Merrick Sorn had not. A private index produced after accusation proves nothing, he said. She could have constructed it from the surviving correspondence. Sabine looked at him. Then you should have no objection to testing it against records I could not alter. Which records? The prison supply dates, ink allotments, copy orders, and Bastien's unanswered questions. Merrick's expression remained controlled. You intend to expose more private captivity language before the court. No, I intend to expose the structure that carried it. She walked into the archive on her own terms. The ash letters followed. No guard guided her. No king summoned her. No chancellor approved her place at the evidence table. Sabine set the cipher index beside the prison supply ledger. Before the first letter entered the ransom corridor, I built 12 separate cipher frames, she said. One for each permitted supply delivery. Every frame used information fixed before the message was sent. Bastien stood across from her. What information? The delivery date, the ink ration number, the prison copy order, and one word from the question you sent before it. Merrick folded his hands behind his back. A correspondence handler could know all four, not the final one. Sabine opened the booklet. Each page held narrow columns of symbols, first word placements, crossed letters, and small hooked marks matching the rhythm Bastien had recognized in the ash letters. Lady Amabel Rook leaned closer. These are not escape routes. They are instructions for building them. Sabine turned to the 9th frame. Final winter, 9th delivery, ink ration 23, prison copy order 6. Bastien looked at the supply ledger. The figures matched. Sabine touched the first line of the index. The 4 root words were placed at sentence openings. The ash letters unfolded above the table. West. Cinder. Second. Daum. She moved her finger lower. The next layer used every 23rd word, because 23 was the ink ration number. Silver-grey words lifted from the letter and formed a second sentence. Trust no key marked with royal brass. Bastien's eyes narrowed. The brass keys opened the watched corridors. Merrick answered quickly. That detail may have entered post-war testimony. Sabine did not argue. She turned the page. The 3rd layer uses the 6th word, after every hooked mark. Copy Order 6. The ash rearranged again. The cinder gatekeeper changes before dawn. Amabel looked at Bastien. Was that in the escape report? No. The answer came quietly. Merrick's jaw tightened, but his voice remained even. Hidden root, knowledge proves the writer had intelligence. It still does not identify Sabine as the writer. Sabine looked directly at him. That is why the fourth layer exists. She placed her hand over the final column. Bastien understood before she explained. The question, yes. Each prison reply had been built from something he wrote first, something no courier seal, archive clerk, or noble house could predict before his message arrived. Sabine opened the first correspondence frame. What did I ask? Bastien said. She did not soften at the pronoun. You asked whether Dragonfire could forget the shape of the man carrying it. The ash letters completed the response. Only if he lets the crown name every part of him. Bastien lowered his eyes. Sabine opened the next frame. You asked whether anyone could love a man who had begged a prison wall to answer. Silver ash gathered. A wall cannot answer. A woman can. The words hung between them. Bastien's face changed, but Sabine did not allow the moment to become romantic shelter. You recognized that voice before you burned it, she said. Yes. And chose official attribution over memory. Yes. Then stand there and let the court see what your certainty cost. He did. No defense. No request for kindness. Merrick stepped closer to the index. Even if Sabine constructed these replies, she may have served as editor for another author. Sabine turned to the 12th frame. The final index page was sealed before the last delivery. By whom? The lower archive witnessed all anonymous escape material before it entered the supply route. That office was dissolved after the occupation. The paper remembers pressure. She laid the page beneath the ash letters. Silver dust settled over an apparently blank margin. Impressed writing surfaced where ink had been deliberately withheld. Witnessed before dispatch. Archive hand SO. Courier mark Greyfinch 12. Merrick spoke at once. Initials again. Still not a full name. Sabine reached into the wooden case and removed her old archive stylus. She pressed its base into the empty witness mark. The metal fit perfectly. A hidden dragon-shaped notch opened beneath the page. The cipher index released its final sealed line. Sabine read it herself. Not Bastien. Not the court scribe. Not the chancellor who had erased her. Cipher frames composed and entered by Sabine Orlow under the protection of Greyfinch 12. The ash letters opened around her. Every surviving page arranged itself in the original sending order. Merrick's calm finally thinned. That line establishes preparation, he said. It does not prove the Royal Archive knowingly reassigned authorship. Sabine closed the cipher index. Then tomorrow, she said, we read the attribution order aloud. By dawn, the Cinderhall Royal Archive had become a courtroom built from letters no one could burn again. Every surviving prison copy hovered above the central table in its original sending order. The ash letters had restored dates, cipher frames, courier marks, and the small hooked strokes that belonged to Sabine Orlow's hand. At the center lay the attribution order. Chancellor Merrick Sorn stood beneath the dark dragon lamps without his archive chain. Lady Amabel Rook faced the court without her wedding signet. Dragon King Bastien Cinderhall remained beside the broken marriage register, wearing no ceremonial crown. Sabine stood before them, with the original cipher index in her hands. Read the order, Bastien said. Merrick's voice remained calm. A royal attribution order concerns state continuity. It should not be interpreted by a claimant. Sabine looked at him. You interpreted my silence for years. She opened the page. The ash letters gathered above her shoulders. Remove private courier attribution after royal restoration, she read. Register correspondence under House Rook authority for wedding continuity. The final line had been written in Merrick's hand. Below it sat the Chancellor's archive seal. Merrick did not deny it. Greyfinch 12 was legally anonymous, he said. The Crown needed an attributable house. House Rook carried the correspondence, financed the ransom corridor, and secured the alliance. I converted uncertain private authorship into stable royal history. You converted a living woman into useful silence, Amabel said. Merrick turned toward her. Your house accepted the benefit. Yes. Amabel faced the court. I accepted an attribution I had not earned, because it strengthened my marriage claim. I did not ask whose intelligence, tenderness, or risk stood beneath my name. She placed the unsigned wedding register on the evidence table. I relinquish every claim to the correspondence. Sabine watched her. It was not absolution, but it was truth spoken without trying to escape its cost. Merrick looked toward Bastien. Your Majesty, if you condemn this order, you condemn the political system that restored you. Bastien's gaze moved to the first letter, the one that had reminded him to count the prison bells instead of the days. Then to the woman whose drafts he had ordered burned. I condemn the choice I made after restoration, he said. I saw Sabine's cipher begin to align. I recognized her voice before the ashes spoke. I chose official seals because they protected my wedding, my authority, and the version of captivity I could endure publicly. No one moved. Bastien continued. I loved the mind inside those letters before I knew her name. When that mind stood before me, I called her claim obsession and burned her proof. Sabine's breath caught. He did not look at her as though the confession entitled him to anything. Good. Bastien faced the archive witnesses. Let the record state that Dragon King Bastien Cinderhall personally ordered the destruction of Sabine Orlow's drafts without completing the cipher examination. Merrick's voice sharpened. You would reduce the crown before foreign houses? The crown was reduced when it required her erasure. The bronze dragon lamps ignited. Not red, white gold. Their flame passed from shelf to shelf, while the ash letters descended toward the prison correspondence. Each silver-gray page settled over its surviving copy and restored what had been cut away. Author, Sabine Orlow. Courier mark, Greyfinch 12. Cipher composer, Sabine Orlow. The Royal Archive itself repeated the attribution across all 12 entries. Merrick stared at the restored pages. A magical reaction cannot replace royal procedure. Sabine closed the cipher index. It did not. The dates, copy orders, supply entries, courier registry, original stylus seal, and your signed attribution order did. The ash letters had not accused him with a convenient sentence. They had returned the correspondence to its structure. That structure left him nowhere to hide. Bastien turned to the tribunal guards. Merrick Zorn is removed from the chancellorship and charged with falsifying Royal Archive evidence, suppressing courier attribution, and constructing counterfeit prison material. Merrick lifted his chin. I kept the kingdom stable. Sabine met his eyes. You kept it quiet. Those are not the same thing. The guards took him from the archive. He did not confess. He did not beg. He continued arguing necessity until the doors closed behind him. Bastien approached the evidence table, but stopped across from Sabine. The archive requires a new keeper. A keeper appointed by the king can be removed by the next convenient king. They're not a keeper. He broke the royal authority seal from the archive charter and placed it beside her cipher index. Independent master of the Cinderhall Royal Archive. No chancellor may alter attribution, destroy private marks, or seal authorship without your countersignature. Sabine looked at the charter. And the crown? Has no claim over your work. I was not asking about the work. Bastien understood. He removed the wedding crown from the velvet stand and set it aside. I will not offer you a crown as payment for what I allowed the court to steal. Good. His eyes held hers. I do not know whether you will ever trust me again. You should not. I know. This time, the answer carried no expectation that honesty would shorten the distance between them. Sabine signed the archive charter. Not Sabine Cinderhall. Not future queen. Sabine Orlow. The ash letters lifted around her. No longer wounded fragments, but a complete correspondence returned to the woman who had created it. Bastien watched her take possession of the archive. May I speak to you again? He asked. When I am not asking you to repair me. Sabine looked at the man she had once known through prison paper. The feelings had not vanished. Neither had the fire. Repair the records first, she said. Restore every name your court made anonymous for its own convenience. I will. And do not wait outside this archive expecting gratitude. I will not. She touched the first restored letter. Love may be discussed only after truth no longer needs to hide. Bastien bowed his head. Not as a king granting honor. As a man accepting terms he had not earned the right to negotiate. Sabine turned toward the shelves that now belonged to no crown above her. For the first time, her words carried her name before the entire dragon court, and she alone would decide who was permitted to read her heart again.